Next story I wanted to talk about is about a guy named Robert Jeffress. I've talked about him many times, but it's been a while. He is an interesting character. He's one of those people that appears on Fox News constantly. As a matter of fact, I think he has his own Fox News show, or he was going to, but it hasn't happened yet, or they canceled it, something like that. Anyways, he was also on Lou Dobbs a lot. He appeared on Lou Dobbs' show constantly until Lou Dobbs was canceled. Back to Jeffress. He is a megachurch pastor leader, and he has some real horrific stuff to say about the LGBT community, about atheists, the whole 9 yards. All the same shit that we hear a lot. But this was pretty interesting. This clip that I wanted to watch, mid-June 2020 is when it came out, and it's one of his more famous ones. So let's give this a listen, see what he had to say.
Here's the question. There are those that would say that the separation clause of the Constitution would mandate that all public discourse be totally secular.
Isn't it interesting how that was framed? So the separation clause of the Constitution basically says that there has to be a separation between church and state. And it's actually called the Establishment Clause, not the Separation Clause. I have no idea what he's talking about. It just says that the government can't endorse any religions or religious symbolism or any of that other stuff. And there was question about what the Establishment Clause meant, what it was talking about. Danbury Church in Connecticut, I believe, wrote a letter to Thomas Jefferson after the Constitution was ratified and everything, and he was asking are you guys getting involved? Are we going to get involved in government or what? And Thomas Jefferson wrote a series of letters back and forth reassuring Danbury Church there would be no involvement between church and state whatsoever. They wouldn't be getting involved in government. Government wouldn't be getting involved in their business. They would stay completely separate. There's a big, long, list of receipts for everything that Jefferson believed. We don't need Supreme Court justices to speak on this because we have the Founding Fathers' beliefs right down there on paper. We know what they wanted. They were very specific with a lot of this stuff. Back to what this guy was saying, that's an interesting framing of it, isn't it? He's saying some people believe the Establishment Clause says public discourse should be religion-free. Who the fuck said that? Nobody said that if you're going to talk out on a street corner, you can't talk about church. What is he even talking about? The way he's framing it is very specifically designed to freak people out and to make it seem worse than it actually is, to make it seem more extreme than it actually is. That's what it's all about. This is a propaganda technique, and they do this shit all the time. 12 seconds in. Let's keep listening.
Do you believe that the separation clause mandates secular discourse?
No, it doesn't mandate secular public discourse. I don't know what they're even talking about. It just says there won't be any kind of mixing of church and state, which is obviously right out the fucking window. Nobody has obeyed that in who knows how long. I'll tell you one thing that's explicitly banned by the Johnson Amendment in IRS tax code. 501c3 organizations, which include churches, are not allowed to specifically endorse or oppose candidates. But we have churches like Jack Hibbs specifically holding campaign events and collecting donations for people like Larry Elder, for electoral candidates. People just don't give a shit anymore. Doesn't matter if it's unconstitutional, doesn't matter if it violates the Johnson Amendment or any of that shit. They don't even care anymore. They just do it anyways, and for some reason, nobody is enforcing it. This is Robert Jeffress's response to that question. It was about a 5 to 10 minute response, and I cut it down a little bit, so let's give this one a listen.
In 1980, the Supreme Court in Stone versus Graham said, you can no longer display the Ten Commandments in a Kentucky school. Can't even display them, much less teach them. What's interesting, Clark, is 118 years before that, a similar case came before the Supreme Court of whether the Bible could be read in school. And the Supreme Court said unanimously, and I'm quoting, Why may not the Bible, especially the New Testament, be taught as God's revelation?
Why can't it be taught as God's revelation? Because that's unscientific, and school is supposed to be a place for learning scientific facts. There is no proof that the Bible is God's revelation. If you want to teach something in school, you need proof. That's just what it is. If we want to say that the Bible is God's revelation in school, then we have to allow people to say the Quran is God's revelation in school also. We have to treat everybody fairly. That's really what all of this comes down to. We have to treat everybody fairly, and they don't really like that fact.
Testament be taught as God's revelation. Where can the principles of morality be so clearly found than the New Testament?
Literally anywhere else. The Bible doesn't lay down any moral imperatives that it doesn't reverse a chapter later. It's contradiction after contradiction with the Bible. Nonsense from beginning to end. You don't get morality out of the Bible. You know what you get? You get affirmations for your already existing beliefs. That's it. It's impossible to not cherry pick. If you have a belief, you can justify it with the Bible. That's why there are preachers out there who hate other people, hate certain minority groups, and other preachers out there who love those people, who love minority groups and want to help them. They love their neighbors as themselves, if you will. There are all kinds of people out there who follow the Bible and have all kinds of different beliefs that they use the Bible to justify, because the Bible is a contradictory mess. It does nothing but reaffirm your already existing beliefs.
Now, that was the Supreme Court 118 years earlier.
Jesus Christ, I am so glad to know that we don't have that set of judges. Somebody who would make a ridiculous, fallacious set of arguments like that. How the hell did we get somebody so completely in as Supreme Court justices 118 years ago, or however long ago? That is ridiculous.
We have allowed the atheists, the secularists, the humanists to hijack our Constitution and pervert it into something our forefathers never intended. That's what the problem is.
No, I mean, we pretty well understand what the Founding Fathers wanted, because Thomas Jefferson wrote it down pretty clearly in his letters to the Danbury Church, or letters with the Danbury Church. We don't need to pervert it or twist it or whatever. And aside from that, the Founding Fathers didn't live in the year 2021 or 2022. They didn't live in the 21st century. They lived in like the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, depending on which people you're talking about. They lived hundreds and hundreds of years ago. The people we're talking about have no idea what this world is like and had no way of knowing when they were writing this stuff down. That is why they created the Constitution to be something that could be changed, added to, removed from, molded to be something that we need it to be in that moment.
I'm going to say this, and it may cost me some book sales, but...
Oh, I bet. It's going to cost you some book sales. Yeah, totally. You're in an ultra-religious area in front of an ultra-religious right-wing church, and what you're about to say in front of these tens of thousands of ultra-religious extremists is going to lose you some book sales. I bet that's why you're saying it. Yep. Let's hear it.
And it may cost me some book sales, but I'm going to say it anyway. Thank God we have a president like Donald J. Trump who understands that.
Wow, that was the cringiest thank God I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. Just for good measure.
Thank God we...
Like, his voice almost cracks. That's super interesting. Okay, so I've introduced you to Robert Jeffress once again. Like I said, it's been a while since I've talked about the guy, so I wanted to give you another little introduction, but he had some other interesting things to say. Back in 2011, he had this to say on a talk show. Check it out.
Part of the problem is we're in this consumer mentality as a church where we have the idea that our job is to build as big of a church as we possibly can. Yeah. And if we get into that idea and fall into that trap...
So let me just give you an idea of what he's arguing here. The argument is some pastors say we want to bring people into the tent. We want to gather allies. We want to work with other people. That's me. I'm there all the way. I want Christians and atheists and everybody alike to work with me to stamp out extremism. I want everybody to come in and work with me to stamp it out. I think that's the only way we're going to get it done. So that's the argument that he is addressing here. Let's see what his response is.
And fall into that trap, then we say, well, we can't say anything that's going to offend people. Why, if we preach that homosexuality is an abomination to God, we better not preach that, because that's going to offend the gays or people who know gay people.
Okay, so right there he's basically saying, I don't give a shit. I'm saying that gay people are going to hell anyways, whether you like that or not. I don't care if it's a smaller tent.
If we tell people what the Bible says, that every other religion in the world is wrong, Islam is wrong. It is a heresy from the pit of hell. Mormonism is wrong. It is a heresy from the pit of hell. Judaism, you know, you can't be saved being a Jew. You know who said that, by the way? The three greatest Jews in the New Testament, Peter, Paul, and Jesus Christ. They all said, Judaism won't do it. It's faith in Jesus Christ.
Okay, so he got a lot of pushback on that, actually, as a matter of fact. Essentially what he said is gay people are going to hell, Jews are going to hell, Muslims are going to hell, and Mormons are going to hell. Basically, that's the premise of the whole bit, right? That's what he's trying to get at. And he got a lot of pushback because there just so happen to be a lot of Christians who believe that God judges your heart. You are not here to make a judgment about other people and whether or not they're going to heaven or hell. Why are you even engaging in this conversation? That's kind of the viewpoint a lot of people take. God specifically said, judge not others lest ye be judged, or something. I don't even know why I'm quoting the King James Version. I read the New World Translation when I was little. Anyways, the point is, the guy got a lot of pushback because why are you even doing this? This is ridiculous. We need to work with others. We want to bring others in. And you talking shit about Muslims and Jews and whoever else, gay people, that's only pushing people away. That is not helping your cause at all. Well, as it turns out, our old buddy Rick Wiles actually came to his defense mid-December 2019. Check this clip out.
It's obvious they're going after Pastor Bob Jeffress because he believes that you must believe on the name of Jesus Christ to be saved. And if you don't do it, you'll spend eternity in the lake of fire. That is basic Christian doctrine.
Not necessarily. I guess it depends. It heavily depends on the denomination that you're working with. I think the fact that Robert Jeffress came out and said, you know, being gay is an abomination and you'll go to hell for it, or being Jewish or being Muslim or whatever else, or being Mormon, all those things will land you in hell. Really, that's the thing that people were getting upset about. Like, why don't you be more accepting and work with others to try to save their souls or whatever? And why don't you just accept that God is the ultimate judge, not you, and you don't actually have any idea if he's going to accept people into heaven or not based on their heart condition? Why can't you just accept that? I mean, look, I get you want people to get baptized, and you want to bring them into the church, and you want to help them stop sinning or whatever the holy fuck. But isolating people and separating them and saying, this group right here, they're going to hell. They are an abomination. They are disgusting to me. That's not helping anybody. That's not winning you any friends. That's not bringing more people into your church. Well, it may be bringing people in, but it's a limited number because it's an extreme view. And extreme views get a lot of enthusiasm, but they get low numbers. The more extreme your viewpoints are, the fewer people will filter into your church or your social group or whatever. But the higher enthusiasm the people who come will have, the more willing they are to donate tons and tons of money, to donate their time and whatever it is they can provide. That's the enthusiasm factor. And that's in large part what Donald Trump tried to capture and successfully did capture, and what Robert Jeffress and Rick Wiles and many others try to capture too, the enthusiasm factor. They don't care if they're accepted by mainstream audiences. What they care about is having people who would literally sacrifice their lives for the cause. I do just want to make note here, though, that they do support Israel. They do not support Jews. I'm always hearing people talk about the fact that Trump, or the supposed fact that Trump supported Israel, but Biden doesn't, which isn't exactly correct anyways, but the conservative is always viewed as the one who supports Israel for some weird reason, but they don't support the Jews at all, ever. The reason for that is because Israel is an integral part of their theology. They believe Israel has to exist as a nation before Armageddon can come. And when Armageddon comes, all of the people in Israel, if they're not Christians, will die out. That's what's going to happen. The nation of Israel is a part of their prophecies, and they need it to exist. They don't give a shit about the people in the country. Like Jeffress just said, they are an abomination that's going to hell. That's what it's about. Check this next clip out. This was an appearance on a talk show called Todd Starnes, early October 2019. Give this a listen.
Look, I heard the sanctimonious Nancy Pelosi this weekend calling for prayer for our country and praying for prayer.
Well, isn't that interesting? He's mocking somebody calling for prayer. How about that shit? He sounds like me right now. Isn't that interesting? When he disagrees with the cause or thinks it's ridiculous, then he makes fun of people for calling for prayer for the nation. How about that shit?
That reminds me of an arsonist, a pyromaniac with a match in his hand about to set a building on fire saying, now pray with me that the destruction I'm about to cause isn't too severe. I mean, if he's sincere, he'll put down the dang match.
You know, we just assume they're praying to God. I'm not quite sure. I don't know, Dr. Jeffress. I mean, they booed God, tried to vote him out of the party platform. I mean,
wait, what is he even talking about? They booed God and tried to vote him out of the party platform? I assume they're talking about the Democrats. What are they talking about? I don't remember anything about this. I remember a lot of conspiracy theories about them saying that like all of the American flags were removed from the Democratic National Convention or some other shit like that. It was just complete bullshit. But is that what they're getting at? Like, what are they talking about? They voted God out of the party platform. I don't understand.
God tried to vote him out of the party platform. I mean,
well, and apparently the God they worship is the God of the pagan God of the Old Testament, Moloch, who allowed for child sacrifice. I mean, the God of the Bible doesn't sanction the killing of millions and millions of children in the womb. I think the God they are worshiping is the God of their own imagination.
There you go. There's the blood libel. I don't know if you guys knew this or if you've ever heard that term before, but there's this thing called blood libel. I don't know when the term was invented, but it was used heavily during World War II. The prevailing party in Germany in the 1940s, they used tropes against the Jewish occupants of the country. They claimed that they were like taking out children and drinking their blood in ritual sacrifices, blah, blah, blah. Any of that sound familiar to you guys? Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like something you've heard from QAnon recently about the Democrats or about, you know, any high-ranking elites, quote-unquote? I mean, this same trope has been recycled and thrown around and applied to like 1 billion people over the decades. It honestly does not surprise me to hear him throwing around the old blood libel trope. So this is the newest clip that just came out. This is from early December 2021. And he had some interesting things to say about the Biden administration. So let's give it a listen. Let me give you a little bit of context for this before entering the video. After the election took place, Robert Jeffress was actually retweeted by Donald Trump multiple times before the election. He knows Donald Trump. Like, they've been pretty close friends in recent years. And after the election, to my surprise, Robert Jeffress wrote an op-ed that basically said, you know, the election's over and we have to accept defeat. It is what it is. Surprisingly, I was blown away by the fact that he came out and said that, considering the climate at the time. A lot of Donald Trump's sycophants were coming out and, you know, making all kinds of claims about election fraud, blah, blah, blah. But Robert Jeffress, to his credit, came out and said, we need to accept the victory and move on. Or we need to accept the loss and move on. Now, with that context in mind, Let's listen to this next clip, early December 2021.
2,000 years later, we can never give the enemies of Jesus Christ a taste of blood. We can never let them be successful in persecution or silencing the Christian church. And it doesn't matter where those attacks come from.
I just want to point out that Christians are the majority group in this country and are the privileged group in this country. If you're a Christian, you have so many more benefits and privileges than any other religious group. It's damn near offensive to hear him pretend to be persecuted like this.
Whether it's an atheistic organization like the Freedom from Religion Foundation,
FFRF is doing nothing but trying to maintain equality. But I get it. I get it, Robert Jeffress. I get it. I do. When all you know is privilege, equality feels like oppression. I understand that's where you're coming from. I'm just disappointed that you don't realize that's what's happening right now.
or whether it's from this ungodly administration we're living under right now from Washington, D.C., we're not going to sit down and take it. And yes, I said it. This is an ungodly administration we have in Washington, D.C. right now.
What makes the Biden administration ungodly, quote unquote? The dude is Catholic, deeply Catholic. Biden is super religious. He is about as far from ungodly as you can get. I can tell you this. I mean, I'm not in Trump's head. I'm not in Biden's head. But Biden has been to church more times than Donald Trump. Take that for what you will.
I don't care how many rosary beads they rub up there in Washington, D.C. This is the ungodliest presidential administration we've had in the history of our country. One of the top officials of the Biden administration is a man who's prancing around in a skirt up there pretending to be a woman.
Talking about the Treasury Secretary, I believe. No. Who is it? There is a trans person in the Biden administration. I don't remember who it is. To my surprise, Biden has actually been fairly supportive of trans rights and trans representation. Rachel Levine. Rachel Levine is the name. And the dehumanizing language that Robert Jeffress is using against Rachel Levine is fucking disgusting to me. Absolutely fucking disgusting. You've got to be a tough person to be able to get up there and, as a trans person, play a role in government like that. Because people like this guy right here are going to attack you anyway. By being openly trans, you just painted an even bigger target on your own back. I have to give mad respect to Rachel Levine, I think was the name, Rachel Levine, for having the courage to go up there and do it anyways, knowing exactly what was going to happen from people like this guy.
Pretending to be a woman. Sick. It's sick. Absolutely sick and immoral. But what they're really doing right now that we need to be aware of is they are now, Joe Biden, rescinding the religious liberty executive order that the former president passed. They're going after groups that preach the gospel of Jesus Christ.
What does he mean, going after groups that preach the gospel of Jesus? What does he even mean by all that? What does he mean going after? I mean, what he's implying here is that the Biden administration is looking for them so that they can put them in jail. That's what he means. That's what he's trying to make you think when he uses the words going after those groups. Obviously, complete nonsense. Biden is a super religious person. But it doesn't matter. This guy just wants to feed the persecution complex, nothing more. Listen to this language. Listen to the language he's using.
We need to be aware of is they are now, Joe Biden, rescinding the religious liberty executive order that the former president passed. They're going after groups that preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they're trying to draw blood from those groups.
He's using language specifically designed to whip people into a blood frenzy and make them feel like they're being make them feel like they're in physical danger. That's what he's doing. That's the language he's using. This is called propaganda. We're watching it front and center right now.
And that's why we are not going to back up. Because we know if they ever succeed in taking the First Baptist Church of Dallas down, they're going to go after every church everywhere that preaches the gospel. And I'm here to tell you, we are not letting up, giving up, or backing up. We're going to preach the gospel here no matter what it does. And if the Biden administration doesn't like it, they can hang it on their beak as far as I'm concerned.
Hang it on their beak. I find it so interesting when some of these hate preachers will use like straight up slurs sometimes. Like they will straight up call people like really, really terrible things. But otherwise, they use ridiculous terms like willy-nilly nonsense or hang it on their beak and stuff. Like you'll go out there, use the F word or the N word or whatever else, and then you say words like willy-nilly nonsense. Why? Just go all the way. Fuck it, right? These people genuinely don't know the difference between privilege and equality. They really don't. It's so fucking sad to watch them attack people who genuinely don't deserve it, like Rachel Levine. I really wish there was some way to show more support for Rachel Levine than we already have, but honestly, the real solution to the whole problem is for him to just stop saying shit like this about the trans community. I just don't know how to get it through his thick skull that what he's doing is hurting people, or how to make him realize that it's wrong to make people hurt, especially for no fucking reason, especially as the majority group in a country with all the privilege. It just eats me up inside to see how he treats people sometimes, but we have to talk about this. We have to keep pointing it out and bringing attention to it because it's not going away. It's getting louder at this immediate moment.